Welcome, Bronco Nation. This very exciting series. I got Ron Counts on today, and we're going to be discussing a little series I'm liking to call 10 and 10, where we're going to be covering the top 10 questions facing Boise State football in 10 separate, right about 10-minute segments. I'm, of course, Bronco Blamar. With me today is Ron Counts from the Idaho Statesman. For great Boise State coverage all season long, make sure that you follow Ron. Make sure you follow Idaho Statesman on Twitter. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel, of course. And then Ron is also going to be writing an accompanying article with each of these videos, going a little bit more in depth about what we discussed today. So make sure that you go and subscribe to the Idaho Statesman as well, so you don't miss out on any of that great content. Thank you all for being here, and let's get to the questions. All right, so the question for today is, will Jonah Dalmas cement himself as the greatest kicker in Boise State history? This is a goal of his. When I spoke to his parents at the UCF game, they said that, right when he came to Boise State, his goal was to leave as the greatest kicker in Boise State history. And statistically, he's pretty close to that number. He's got the number one most points in a single season, most field goals in a single season in 2021. He's got number 5 for most field goals in a single season as well. So he's got the number 1 and the number 5 record in that 2021 and 2022. His second in career total at 56, right behind Kyle Brotzman at 67. So he would only need 12 field goals this year to break that number. And besides the COVID year, he's had more than 12 field goals every season. And he's number 1 in field goal percentage with an 89%. So he's really close there statistically to either being the number 1 or being just behind the number 1 there. His career-wise, he's had some great years. 2020, of course, starting off with only 1 missed field goal, long of 51. 2022, only 2 missed field goals out of 28. One of the best records in the nation that year, 26 out of 28, long of 47. 2022 for him was a step back. He only went 23 of 27, but that was still an impressive number overall with a long of 51. 2022 was also groundbreaking for him because it was his first time that he'd really contributed to winning games with his leg, where you look back and you said, yeah, the kicking game definitely won us those games. Air Force, where the final score was 19-14. He made 4 field goals along 51. Wyoming, where he made 2 field goals and we only won by 3 points. The bowl game, where we only won by 3 points and he made 2 field goals. So he hasn't had that, line up in overtime and kick the field goal moment, but he's definitely contributed to winning those games. Where do you see him standing right now in the Hall of Fame of Boise State kickers, that legacy? Where do you see him standing as far as the greatest of all time for Boise State?
I think he's right there. I mean, it's hard to say he's the best because he doesn't have Brossman's record, right? But he's going to make 12 field goals this year. He's going to own that record. So by the end of the season, I think it's safe to say he will be the best kicker in Boise State history. And he has the mentality to do it. And that's the key to kickers, mentality. It is such a mental game. It is such a repetitive game. You see kickers in practice. There's a reason that they're by themselves. It's not just because they don't want to run sprints and hit the big guys. They're focused on what they have to do, because if their leg swing is a fraction of an inch off, they're going to miss that field goal. That kicking is one of those things where you've got to get every step perfect every time, or you're going to miss that field goal. And you're right. The big thing that he showed last year is that the moment is never going to be too big for him. You mentioned those big games against Air Force, against Wyoming, against North Texas. I go back to the game against Fresno State, where at the end of the half, the coach kept trying to ice him. The coach called all 3 of his timeouts to ice him, and he couldn't do it. Dalmas hit 3 straight field goals. So the kid's got it. Whatever it is, he's got it, and he's only going to get better this year.
Boy, is the Iceman Jonah Dalmas. That's not the first coach that has tried to do that. Craig Bull tried to do that himself and found himself unsuccessful. What do you think he needs to do to cement himself as the number 1 kicker here in Boise State history? Is it just a statistical thing? Does he have to have that lining up and win the game kick? And what role do you think that Tyler Rausa, a frequent guest on this channel, who has taken the role as the kicking coach for Boise State, what role do you think he will have in developing Dalmas here in his senior year?
I think Jonah has to just keep doing what he's been doing. His stats are great. You mentioned 2021, he only missed 2 field goals. He only missed 4 last year, long of 51. So he's got the leg, he's got the technique, he's got the mentality. But I think he does need that one career-defining performance. Maybe it's at Washington. Maybe it's a game-winning field goal against UCF this year. He needs that one moment to really cement himself as the greatest in Boise State history. But Tyler Rausa being on the staff, I think, is going to be huge for him. I mean, there's no better teacher than someone that's done it at a high level. And Tyler Rausa is one of the best kickers in program history. He only kicked for Boise State for 2 years, but he owned the single-season field goal record that Jonah Dalmas broke in 2021. And he's done it at a high level. Rouse has kicked in the USFL. He's come back. He's going to make Jonah Dalmas that 0.1% better that he needs to be that greatest kicker. So I think the sky's the limit for Jonah Dalmas.
Well, fans remember not necessarily the statistics, but they remember that moment, that feeling. We all remember Sachs kicking his heart out against Florida State and keeping Boise State in the game until their offense was able to pull it out there in the end. And so, yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that it's not just statistically. I think that he definitely will. I believe he'll take the record this year. He only needs to make 12 field goals. Boise State's had some red zone troubles in the past. I don't expect them to be 100% in the red zone this year for touchdowns. So I do expect him to be able to get that record this year. And who knows? There's a tough schedule ahead for Boise State this season, and there's going to be some games that come down the wire. Maybe he'll get that moment to come out in the field and cement it himself. Regardless, I think that you can definitely look back that he's completed his goal as being one of the greatest kickers in Boise State history, and whether he pulls every fan's heart for the best of all time, statistically, he, I think, will own that record overall. Where do you think, however, he lines up when it comes to discussion of the Mountain West? We can say he's the best kicker for Boise State and maybe the best in school history, but is he the best kicker in the Mountain West this year?
That's a tough question because it is a surprisingly deep kicker class this year in the Mountain West. So you look at the returning Mountain West Special Teams Player of the Year, Jack Browning. He replaced the punt god at San Diego State last year. He handled punts and kickoffs for San Diego State, went 20 of 25 on field goals last year. So he's got to be the favorite coming into the season to win it again. But then you look at Brandon Talton, a fifth-year senior at Nevada. He owns the Mountain West career record for field goals with 68. So he's another talented kicker. And then you have John Hoyland out at Wyoming, who only missed 2 field goals last year. We had I think the best field goal percentage in the conference last year. So, that's 3 talented guys right there. So the tough thing is, Jonah Dalmas could have his best season of his career, but still not win Mountain West Player of the Year. It's just one of those years where he's just got so much competition. But that being said, he's going to be the best in program history. He's going to own that record, and I think he goes to NFL next year. Is he drafted? No. I mean that's a bit of a pipe dream. Kickers are very rarely drafted. But Jonah told me 2 years ago that the NFL was his goal, that was his dream. So I'm sure that hasn't changed. So I definitely think he's the guy that we're going to be talking about come NFL draft season next year.
I mean, I know that he was getting draft hype after his sophomore year, so I definitely think coming into his senior year, he's played 4 years at Boise State, and he probably ends up going then on to the NFL. He would have one more year of eligibility. He could take it if he wanted to. Do you think there's any scenario at all where he says, my job's not done, I need to go back for one more year? Any scenario at all?
Certainly, I think it is. I don't know what his academic situation is. Maybe he wants to graduate before he leaves. If Boise State doesn't win the Mountain West title this year, maybe that motivates him to come back. It's hard to say. I just think he's got the leg. He's got an NFL leg. He's got NFL accuracy. It's just NFL special teams is a tough job to win, man. You look at a great a long snapper like Daniel Cantrell. He barely sniffed the NFL because it's just those guys get those jobs and they don't give them up. NFL kickers and long snappers and holders, they're in those jobs for a decade. So there's only so many jobs to go around. But the great thing for a guy like Jonah Dalmas now is there's the XFL, there's the USFL, there's the Canadian Football League. He's going to make money kicking the ball at some point.
Well, it's going to be a great season, I believe, for Jonah Dalmas here. He's got a great mentor there in Tyler Ralsa, like we talked about. I think that's going to have a major impact on not just him, but the special teams in general, for sure. But I expect there to be a great season here for Jonah Dalmas. I expect him to claim that record for himself. He may get that moment in the sun to have that kick that defines program history. But regardless, I think that at the end of this season, he's going to be able to look back and see himself as the number one. If he doesn't, maybe there's a chance he comes back. He's one of those true blue Boise State hard, blue collar guys that's not there for just himself. He's there for the team. And if he doesn't achieve his goal of being the greatest in school history and having given that contribution, maybe there's a chance he comes back. But I agree with you. I think that there's an NFL future for this kid. I thought so from 2020 season when he came out and went 7 of 8, which was just incredible. So I'm excited for the future of him. I'm excited to see what the pairing of a friend of mine there in Tyler Ralsa and Jonah Dalmas was able to do together. It's been an exciting preview series so far. We have one final video to look at. It's going to be a really exciting one. We're talking about Andy Avalos, some of the pressures he's facing this year. So make sure you stay tuned for that video coming out. Make sure you go back and watch all the previous videos in this series, all 9 of them, including this one. It's been a great discussion. I look forward to ending the series here. Make sure that you guys subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to Idaho Statesman. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel. And give us your thoughts in the comments. Where you think Jonah Dalmas will find himself at the end of this season when it comes to the Boise State record books. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for watching. As always, go Big Blue.